All right, we are live. So welcome everybody who are here live or those watching the recording. We are very excited to have this conversation today around winter fitness and nutrition. We have two amazing practitioners who are special guests. I'm going to let them each intro themselves, so I don't just hype them up so much. I'm going to let them intro themselves. And then we'll jump into it. So just for context for this, like we've emailed about, this is going to be an hour conversation. We're going to essentially devote a third of it towards nutrition, a third towards fitness, and then a third towards Q&A as kind of dedicated time. But for those who are here live, like I said, make it comfy, conversational. We're not going to be sharing our screens and doing presentations and that kind of stuff. It's just kind of like intimate living room talk. So feel free to chime in, ask questions. Molly, what's up? Thanks for joining.
Hi. Sorry.
Hi. All good. So we're going to jump into it. So I'll give a quick intro on myself. My name is Ethan Schiff. I run Optimized Health. We provide health coaching, group programs, all this kind of stuff, wellness retreats. And we work with people around the country focused on helping them hit their health goals, but in a sustainable way that they can work with for life, as opposed to some sort of quick fix program or something like that. And we are pumped to have our two guests, Alyssa and Lauren. Alyssa, why don't you go first in introing yourself, a bit about what you'll be talking about today, and then Lauren, you can go after that.
So my name is Alyssa McCauley. Thank you for having me, Ethan. I'm absolutely honored. I am the founder of Energy Mitigates Pain. That's what I kind of came up with for what I do with people, and that I am a pain-free strength and mobility specialist. So I help people either get out of pain through their injuries or stay out of pain and just be the strongest version of themselves. But that's really coming from the inside out, as opposed to, focusing on that typical aesthetics outside part of fitness that most people tend to focus on. So really focusing on how you feel inside, and then that bringing the outside, results that everybody's looking for. And then you actually feel good. So I work with people in person, and I also work with people online via coaching remotely as well.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you. Lauren, you want to intro yourself?
I would love to. Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren Papelis. I am a registered dietitian and an integrative and functional nutrition certified practitioner. What that essentially means is that we are working to treat the person as a whole versus the symptoms. So again, getting to the root, figuring out what's happening inside the body. I actually work for a private practice back in Columbus, Ohio. It's a functional and integrative practice through a doctor. And I'm working remote because I'm out in California. So I'm in San Diego, California. All of my consults with clients are via Zoom or by phone. And if somebody wants to come out to California, I am happy to do an in-person consult. But a lot of what I do, like I said, is working from the inside out, similar to what Alyssa was just saying. So that's really amazing, looking at it from a fitness aspect as well as a nutrition aspect.
I love it. Beautiful. I was so happy that we found a date that worked for both of you. I know you all who are here and those watching the recording are going to get a lot out of this. So let's start with nutrition. Let's start with nutrition. I feel like not only because this week is maybe Thanksgiving, but a lot of things we're hearing with our coaching clients, like the nutrition piece this time of year, flares up, because I feel like Thanksgiving is sort of like the Super Bowl of diet culture and food related challenges, but it kind of starts there and trickles through the rest of the winter. So I guess to begin with, for those people who are looking at holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, or beyond specific holidays, just this time of year where maybe it's darker, colder, you're less motivated to go out and buy groceries, are there specific quick tips or ideas that come to mind that you're just like finding with your clients that everybody could benefit from?
Great question. So many things. Do you guys have your pen and paper ready? So I think, this is such an overwhelming time of year, right? This is actually the perfect time for us to be having this conversation because it's on the front end. We're not looking at, it's great to tap into the January timeframe, but we're looking at this as what can we do now and moving through the next couple of months to really support the body, right? So shifting the mindset around the food to be how do we get back to the basics? What are our intentions around food? What are some realistic expectations around our nutrition this time of year? And I think one of the number one things is just understanding, if right now we're not, moving our body 5 days a week and meal planning and creating 15 recipes a week, that's probably not going to be a realistic goal for us as we move into the holiday season. So I'd say, one of the biggest things, Ethan, and I talk about this with my clients all the time, is meal planning and preparation. And we're not saying 8 hours on a Sunday in the kitchen and, feeling like this is such a daunting experience. But how do we lean into this season with tools that we can build our toolkit with in order to support the body throughout your week by understanding what's in our upcoming week is number one, right? Identifying what am I navigating this week? So this week we have Thanksgiving, right? So I need to make sure I have my meals that are going to be nourishing my body Monday through Wednesday. Maybe I don't need to prep food for Thursday because I have other plans. But the first step is identifying from a week to week perspective, what are the things that we need to navigate? So then that way, you know what you're planning for. And I'd say that's probably one of the biggest first steps in this conversation. So you even know what you need to buy or what you're going to navigate in terms of eating out at restaurants or what that might look like for you.
Yeah, I love it. And it's also, I think what you said is so true, which is I think people associate meal prepping with, okay, I'm dedicating my Sunday to cooking meals for the week. And I don't know anybody who has ever done that successfully and enjoyed that. And that's a realistic thing. So I think starting with, here's what my week is. Okay, maybe I'm chunking it as Monday to Wednesday I can meal prep for, or ahead about even, or just take a second to know what's coming up food wise. And then maybe doing it again the second half of the week. I think that's great. What about as far as specific foods? I really want to touch on the idea, and you kind of touched on this, but we need to often, I think, broaden our view of nutrition beyond just like what will give me this body composition and more around our total health. Right. So something like the immune system and cold and flu season, like that is health in a way that having a six pack it's a different thing. Right. So what about the immune system? What can we do with nutrition and what's even going on there?
Yeah. What the heck? Why are we talking about food and immune system? Right.
Right.
No, I think two things come to mind. Number one would be the season changing, right? So we're going to have different foods that we're going to rely upon now than what we were in the summer season. And that's also great for exploring new flavors, feeling like there's some creativity in the kitchen. So you're not just eating chicken and broccoli every single day. Not that that's good or bad, but it doesn't have to be that way, right? So I think number one, seasonality. So looking at, I've been loving like winter squash right now. I just tried a honey nut squash for the first time. Have any of you had one of those before? They're absolutely delicious if you have not tried it, and they're smaller size. So it's something that's, if you're feeling a little, I'm not sure if I want to try that, dive into it. It's kind of bite size. But anyways, winter squash is great, roasting Brussels sprouts or leaning into using the crock pot, like simple tools that we can make use of. Now, the reason I'm mentioning variety within seasonality too is because when we go back to the conversation of the immune system, an interesting fact that you may or may not know is that 70% of our immune system is actually in our gut. So if we want to support our immune system, we literally need to feed our gut. And to do that, we need plant diversity in our diet. So as much as it's great to have simple, a couple staples of vegetables, we truly need the diversity in these colors of eating the rainbow throughout our week so we can actually help support a healthy immune system. So I mean that's huge in itself, right? And so just making sure that we're trying some new things or getting comfortable with other colors is actually going to help support our overall gut health, our immune system, and then it's going to help us fight back for all these viruses and things that are coming our way this season.
Wow. So the variety of the food for people who are thinking about gut health and immune system and supporting themselves, a good place to start is in diversity in the food you're eating.
Yes, exactly. And it's the plant fiber specifically. I actually, it's a new concept to me. I wanted to mention this to you guys so you could write it down. You can Google this. But has anybody ever heard of the gut microbiome veggie mash concept?
No.
No. Okay. Ethan, I wasn't sure. I thought you might actually have heard of this before.
Nope. I have admittedly definitely not heard of that.
Well, everybody should look it up because it's great. So I tried this on myself this weekend. Again, this is not a new concept, just new to me. But essentially what you do, and it's in alignment with supporting a healthy immune system and a healthy gut microbiome. By the name, you could probably tell. But you go to the store, you grab 15 different vegetables and herbs. It could be 15, it could be 30, but start small, you can go with 15. You might already have some in your refrigerator, and pick out some things that maybe you're not comfortable with. Maybe you don't normally have beets or cauliflower or parsnips or turnips or some herbs. So I went to Trader Joe's, walked on over, grabbed various colors of produce from vegetables and herbs specifically. And then when you come home, lay it all out, wash it all off, grab, if you have a food processor, that's the ideal. You start chopping things up. And I'm going to say this was actually very therapeutic. There's something about chopping up a bunch of produce that you don't have to prep or do anything with. So throw it all in. Mine was a beautiful purpley red color just because of the beets and the radishes that were in there. But the whole premise of this is that you've now gone from maybe you typically eat 5 vegetables a day, maybe they're all green. And now you've expanded to 15, maybe 20, or even 30, all in this mixture. So you put it all in a bowl, mix it all up, put some in your fridge, put some in your freezer, some in ice cube trays. So I did all of these. And I'm going to try it in smoothies. I'm going to try it in soups. You just pull out a piece of it, put it in whatever you're cooking. And this week I've just been taking a tablespoonful and eating it. And in that bite, I've now consumed 15 different pieces of produce of all different color and given my immune system a huge boost for that day. So a really cool concept that I think is really approachable too.
Yeah, and you can apply it to so many things. And that's, to clarify, that's 15 foods or herbs.
Correct. So I did like some cilantro and parsley and then a bunch of other vegetables.
Got it. Because I was going to say 15 different veggies would be intense, but that's great.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. And what
You said
about
food processor?
Yeah. So I
Okay,
have
you want it chopped up really fine, not necessarily mashed.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did read a tip. Again, this is new to me, but it said don't use a blender specifically because I think it'll just become more of a mash, which isn't a problem. You just might like the texture better. And then I've actually just added some apple cider vinegar and olive oil on top of my little bits that I've been consuming like for lunch today. And you can do whatever you want with it, but it just depends on kind of what your flavor ends up being based on what you choose.
wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. All right. So this time of year, also on the immune front, what about anything? I know we can't technically go so far, but as far as supplements go, are there specific supplements this time of year that most people can benefit from?
What you'll hear for the vitamins specifically, vitamins and minerals, right? So let's think about this from what are we trying to gain from our food that we could be supplementing with, or what some people may want to consider supplementing with. So vitamin D, especially if you're not living out in sunny California this time of year, you might need that boost. Vitamin C, zinc, those are going to be some of your basic elements, but also looking at it, like I said, from a food standpoint, vitamin C, we can get that from citrus. We can get that from bell peppers and broccoli. So there are ways that we can boost it up through the food that we're eating too.
Awesome. Love it. what about scenarios? And I know I'm kind of going lots of questions, but
That's
this is
okay.
most common questions we get.
Mhm.
What about the balance between, and this is a deeper question, but the balance between, okay, I want to stick to my health goals and I have my routines and this kind of stuff. But I'm traveling back home for the holidays, or there's lots of holiday parties, or there's more nights out or drinking.
Mhm.
I think being practical is super helpful, but I also think for many people, there's probably a tension and a bit of an anxiety that maybe comes with that, of like, how do I stick to my routines, but I don't want to be obsessive about it? Or how do I indulge, but not let the indulgence turn into 5 days of eating as much as possible and then go back on Monday? Any thoughts on kind of navigating that, or giving yourself maybe permission to indulge in a different way than you would in the past?
That's a great question. And I, of course, am getting a lot of these questions right now, too. And I
Yeah.
think, number one, it's thinking about it as, again, going back to setting the expectation for yourself, right? What are my health goals? And also understanding that we're not going to be perfect, right? That's not the goal. And just understanding that we have to give ourselves grace in the process. So I think, are there ways that we can still support our body no matter what situation we're in? Yes. So what I mean by that is, are we hydrated, right? Can we still drink water no matter where we're at? Can we, dependent on the situation, but could you offer to make a side dish or bring a side dish so that there's still something there that you feel will help support your body, in that situation, whatever it is, especially if you're somewhere for like 5 days and, maybe you want to incorporate some of the things that you would typically do at home. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be your perfectly planned meals. And also listening to your hunger and fullness cues. So I think even when we are indulging, let's say, or people call it cheating, I don't like to use that language, but in those situations, it's listening to your body. Maybe I'm full. Why am I still eating? Why don't I go move my body, drink some water, come back? Do I even still want whatever was on my plate? Or am I eating because it's there? So I think, just a few different things there. It's being realistic with the expectations, leaning into your base foundations, seeing where it makes sense to still, lean into some of the things that you do back home, and not skipping meals to save up, anything like that. So still making sure that you're nourishing your body throughout the day with well-balanced meals. So then that way, when you get into, let's say it's Thanksgiving meal, you're not starving and hangry and your blood sugars are all over the place. And then you're just making all these choices that are going to make you feel awful afterwards. So we're just trying to mitigate those experiences from occurring.
100%. And I think too, it's worth noting, you touched on it, but this idea, I always talk to you about this, where it's like, people seem to have this automatic assumption that the goal is to save up calories for
Mhm.
big meals, whether it's Thanksgiving or holidays or dinner with their friends or whatever. And it
Mhm.
just is not like, if I could overnight have something go away from all of the dieting world, like that would be it. Like that
Mhm.
is not a thing anybody should do, and it doesn't work. I don't even know if work should be in quotes. I'm like, I don't even know what, but um, but the reality is, when you save up, and I just want to say this, like, when
Mhm.
people save up the calories, I mean, A, that's creating stress on their body and tension on their body and anxiety. And B, you're then showing up to Thanksgiving or whatever meal, starving. And then in
Mhm.
that moment, you're like praying for discipline, sitting down at the Thanksgiving table when you haven't eaten all day. So if
Mhm.
you have health goals anyway, it's like, I promise, whatever you're going to be overeating in that meal because you're starving is much worse for you than the 2 eggs you skipped for breakfast would be
Mhm.
anyway. So,
Mhm.
um,
Definitely.
just everything in this whole process becomes easier if you're not starving in your decision making. So,
Mhm. No, that's a great point. I also, one other thing on that, I like to think about this whole season is these are all just choices around food, right? We have a next choice. There's going to be more choices tomorrow. So when we're talking about, kind of getting off track from our goals, the beauty of it is, and the power of this is that the next day you can shift those choices. It doesn't have to mean all or nothing. You went off, from your typical, well, now I'm just throwing in the entire holiday season, right? I hear that a lot. Well, let's take a step back. It could actually be just, let's make a different choice for tomorrow. Let's see how we can better support the body in our next choice, and understanding that it's progress over perfection. And I think, Ethan, I actually heard you say recently too, which resonated with me, was always something versus all or nothing. And I really liked that. And I think people, again, see that really approachable, and understand that we don't have to put all this pressure on ourselves, because we're human. And if we do that, we're going to set ourselves up for failure.
I love it. That's awesome. And I'm glad that resonated. Yeah, always something versus all or nothing. That's like the whole thing, it doesn't have to be perfect and doing all the things every day. I love that. We're going to shift
Okay.
fitness, just thinking about time, and we're going to have room at the end for conversation. But everything you just said resonates and is super helpful and fantastic. So thank you. Alyssa, let's jump into fitness. I find, I'm going to ask you a similar first question, which is, I find this time of year, lots of our clients are trying to figure out their fitness goals, routines, for some people who might be typically going on walks, but they live in places where it's icy and cold and snowy and dark, that might not be as accessible. And people who might be very advanced, or fitness is a big part of their life, are less motivated, and they have to get to the gym and they're cold and dark and all this stuff. Are there a couple quick tips or general thoughts around the philosophy of what your fitness can be this time of year that you want to start with?
So my brain goes around, especially because it's colder and getting outside isn't as accessible. So that just makes it a little bit less inspiring of sorts. How can you really create that environment, whether you have to stay inside to do your exercise? How can you create the most productive environment for yourself, the most inspiring environment for yourself indoors? Whether that looks like having certain types of equipment or things in that space that make you feel more inclined to want to do your movement routine, whatever that looks like. And then also, like, Lauren had touched on, being patient and having grace with yourself in, the process of all of that, and that we are not perfect, especially as we also may be traveling through the holidays too. And the schedule may not be on point as it is for a normal week. And so, tips with all of that would also be similar, that, you're not sticking to that 100% of the time. I need to get this regimented schedule in, but how can I get maybe 20 minutes of just some movement in? Or let's say that's just walking around the house because I can't get outside, and going up and down my stairs and doing things like that, setting a timer, doing that, listening to a podcast and doing that. It's always getting something in, which would be better than, saying, oh, it's dark and it's cold out, I can't do anything right now. So just being on the more of the side of, how can I give myself a little something? Even if it's not what I would normally be doing, it's something. And that's my, my tip for most people that would be going through that during this time of year. Yeah. And, as far as, having access to the same equipment or whatever the normal regimen entails, just adapting that and looking at it in a different way, and shifting the mindset around getting movement in general, instead of trying to be so stuck to what you were doing.
That's great. So also goes back to that idea of, it doesn't have to be the exact same routine you've been doing all the time. It needs to be able to adapt, and where you can grab the minutes, like, take them, but don't feel pressure, or maybe define a workout as well, a workout is 60 minutes where I'm in a puddle of sweat at the end of it. And if I'm not able to do that, I shouldn't do any form of workout.
Yes. Yes. I know that a lot of people hold themselves to that as well, that like, oh, well, I didn't like nearly die in that workout. That wasn't worth it. That doesn't count, and that's not it at all. It's that you got to move your body for 30 minutes instead of 0, that counts for a lot more than doing nothing.
Yeah, I love that. I also want to touch on something that I have experienced myself, and I think lots of other people have, which is, I find it can be helpful to look at this time of year also as a time when you can maybe, instead of viewing these things as a challenge or, well, now I can't do the thing I do the rest of the year, to view it as maybe an opportunity to try something new or different, or get a little bit creative. Like if somebody's a runner, right? Like I know we've got some runners here right now, but if somebody's a runner and running isn't quite as accessible in the moment, or just you don't feel as motivated or whatever, it's like, okay, this could be a time of year to try strength training in a new way, or to try mobility work in a new way, or to try some cycling classes or whatever. I think being able to have some sort of fun, like people don't usually talk about that as like part of fitness, but I just want to hear your thoughts on all of that.
Yeah. And I think that with how the culture around fitness is in general, taking it so seriously to be like, I need to be doing this one thing and this is the only thing. Having fun with it is really important for sticking with it in general. If you don't enjoy it, it's going to be hard to. And I really do like your idea of how this time of year would be an opportunity more so to get more creative. If it isn't the time of year that's the most ideal for getting outside to run, then how can you kind of adapt that and maybe try something new? And if you don't like it, then try something different that could be comparable. But as far as movement routines go, I always encourage people to try different things, and we lose sight of the play in it. Like you could literally play a game with yourself of movement kind of routine and putting something together. You could dance, it's really just moving your body in different ways and incorporating them in ways that feel good.
That's great. Can you talk a little bit about strength training specifically? Not just because I'm always promoting it and telling people that they should be doing more of it, but for you, I think your approach to strength training is amazing. I think I know you touched on it in kind of your intro, but a lot of your focus is around pain-free strength training. So I want to hear more about what is the best way to approach strength training, maybe for somebody who isn't regularly strength training or is kind of intimidated by it, or something I hear a lot is, I know I should be doing more of it, but I don't know, it's just not my thing, or I don't know where to start, or especially, you also hear a lot of it where women, I've been finding more and more, maybe women in their 40s, 50s, early 60s. I've been hearing a lot with clients kind of like, all right, I know I should be strength training more, but I don't know, it's just not my thing. Like for any population, where does your head go with kind of approaching strength training from a thoughtful way?
So I always love to encourage people to, if they're not comfortable jumping in on their own and they have the means to, hire someone to guide them, to make sure that they are comfortable and safe with what they're doing. Always having a professional by your side is very helpful. And, in terms of starting on your own, taking things more from, so like for instance, my sister doesn't work with anybody in person or go to the gym. She just does YouTube workouts, and she likes to do it in our apartment in the middle of the floor, and she just gets her workout in, and she might go run on the treadmill or run outside, and that's it. But she's followed these YouTube workouts for a while. Now, there could be some different various exercises that, starting out may not be appropriate, but, maybe looking into, hey, like beginner exercises for, mostly sedentary adults. And there's probably some article or research, something out there that would say like, hey, this is most appropriate for, just starting out. And, I always say starting with body weight is where I would start a client, especially before I put any weights in their hands. And always starting with less range of motion on exercises, especially if there's pain associated with a range of motion. For instance, if you go down to squat and you hit a certain range or depth where you start to feel pain in your knees or something, then you want to stop your range of motion right before that point where you hit the pain and just groove the range of motion that's pain-free. Eventually, the pain should go away because you're not constantly forcing through it. Everything with our body is a conversation, as something that I always say. So, if your body's talking to you in a way that it's in pain, it's screaming at you, hey, like, stop that. So listening to it and strengthening what is available without pain and what is accessible without pain is where I would start there too. So that goes with less range of motion, but you're still moving.
Yeah, I love it. So overall with all this, it's kind of taking the approach of doing what you can with the time you have and being thoughtful about that and not feeling the expectation to do all the things all the time. And B, maybe you can have this curiosity, whether it's strength training or otherwise, to do something you're not typically doing and be able to have fun with that and be okay going, you know what, I don't necessarily know all the things about this, and that's fine. And that's kind of the whole point. And being able to kind of go into it that way is helpful.
Yeah. And I think the last thing I would even tack on to that is the biggest thing I've learned about movement, even for myself, and what I like to share with everybody that I work with, is that there really is no wrong movement unless it's giving you excruciating pain. But like, human movement is human movement, and you can move your body in any way that feels good. And, there's nothing wrong with that.
That's so true. That's awesome. One more question for you, and then we'll open it up to kind of larger conversation. So I hope everybody's ready because I'm calling on all of you. I want to talk about pain and back pain specifically, not just because I've had recent back pain. I've texted Alyssa recently being like, I need help with this thing for my back. Like, I'm trying to do this lift. What do we do? Alyssa's my go-to for all things pain-free strength training. But in general, beyond myself, like, pain is pretty common regardless of age and regardless of type of exercise. But with back pain, which is probably the most common thing, what is the usual route you would go for somebody that says, maybe I have low back pain, or I'm worried about exercising, or where does mobility play into this? Where does core engagement play into this? What are just a few quick tips for anybody with back pain or just kind of pain in general?
So more often, or most often, what I run into is, and even in myself, because I've suffered from an extreme amount of back pain also, is that there is a lack of connection to the area, a lack of movement in the area, and a lack of strength in the area. So all those things, getting a good connection through specific mobility exercises. The one that I will always give someone who is suffering from back pain is spinal segmentation. Just learning how to connect with your spine one bone at a time, and just really starting to master that. And then that's teaching you how to move your spine, how it's supposed to move in flexion and extension. And with that, then you layer strength on top of that. So the reasoning for even that layering is that you've now taught your body how to move properly, and each individual segment knows how to move. Then you layer the strength on there, and every part, every muscle and bone can move properly because you've taught it and gave it the time for the neurological connection to go. Now, oftentimes when someone's experiencing pain in an area, there is a neurological block that happens just naturally because your body has gone into protection mode. So it's usually stiff and all that kind of stuff. So we want to teach it how to move safely, and through mobility exercises, that's how we can achieve that. And so really, the whole like you can't move your spine, brace everything, yeah, that may be appropriate under like a 300-pound squat, but for the average everyday human, we move like humans. You flex, you twist, you turn, you bend, you extend. Those are human movements. So you need to teach your spine how to move like that in order to start to heal your pain. Otherwise, it's probably going to keep coming up. And I personally experienced that in my own life as well.
Yeah.
So learning how to connect to your body in pain-free ranges until those pain-free ranges open up, and then layering strength on top of that.
And is the idea that before any form of exercise, whether it's strength, running, yoga, whatever, that you're starting with a quick kind of mobility routine to wake up and engage? Or is it dedicated days where you're only doing mobility work and engagement work? Or is it ideally both?
Ideally, you should mesh it into the routine as a part of it. So it's part of the warm up. It's I'm sure you've heard me talk about CARS before, controlled articular rotations. There's a full body routine for every joint in the body. And it literally is like the easiest thing to just like, all right, today's upper body day. I'm going to do some shoulder CARS, some scap CARS, and you're going to have that much better of a connection to that area. Your body's going to know what range of motion it has access to. The muscles are going to be connected very, very well from brain to muscular capacity. And the joints also get this synovial fluid that make them just, I say buttery, that makes them feel super buttery. Basically, you feel like you can move your joints easier because they've gotten this fluid.
And for those, last question, because I know, and we've talked and I'm aware of all your stuff you've got going on. For those who just heard that and they're like, what are CARS? Say that again. Can you explain what that means?
CARS are an abbreviation for controlled articular rotations. Basically, controlled articular means joint, and then rotation. So you're rotating your joint, whatever joint that is. So for instance, the shoulder, as I was just doing, you would just slowly move it through its full range of motion. And at first it's a little bit like it's very technical because you're moving it through, flexion, extension, rotation, and all these different parts. But once your body gets used to knowing like, like this is what my joint's actually supposed to do, it starts to really, really become like a second nature, and your body just feels so much better over time.
And so you're doing that with shoulders, you're doing that with your hips, you're doing that with different joints around your body, your ankle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And all the clicks and pops that happen at first are very, very normal because your joints just aren't used to moving in that capacity. And over time they go away.
Got it. Awesome. Alyssa, Lauren, geniuses, brilliant. I love it. Both of you super helpful. We're going to open it up to questions. I've already asked them both lots of questions so far. Does anybody have anything they want to share? Questions, maybe real life things going on with you right now that you're curious about while we have two experts here? Oh, Aaron, I think you're muted. But
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
This CARS that you were just talking about, is there like a video we could watch to like learn how to do it? Or is it just...
Yeah, so I actually have a course that on my website that teaches the entire routine.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It breaks down each individual joint, what you don't want to do during each one. So basically there are compensations that can happen when you first start, especially where your whole body's going to be wanting to take over for the one joint that we're focusing on. So yes, I do have a course that teaches you everything.
Cool.
And we can also afterwards, I'll send a follow-up email with the recording of this, and both Lauren and Alyssa will have links to their work or any programs or ways to reach out to them. And we can put a link to that in there also. No
Yeah,
problem.
I just kind of had the same question as Aaron. I've never heard of that before,
Mhm.
cards. And I have lower back pain, and I feel like every joint in my body hurts too at some point in time. So that would be interesting to check out.
Yeah, especially if you're in a colder area, these cars will probably be a great thing to put into your routine. I do them every morning. I've been doing them every morning. There'll be mornings that I miss, but when I first learned the routine, I did it pretty much every morning for about 8 months straight, and I saw the hugest difference in my body, felt the hugest difference in my body, especially my back.
Mm.
And just dedicating, it started with setting a timer for like 1 minute and getting through one of the exercises. And then the next day I set my timer for 2 minutes. And, because it can be a little intimidating up front, especially I've seen as I've taught it to people that they just like don't feel like they can dedicate to the full routine, especially when you're learning. So taking it like piece by piece, and then mastering one joint at a time is also my suggestion to make it more bite-sized, and just setting a timer for like 5 minutes, and you give yourself the 5 minutes of moving some of your joints and you feel good.
How long does the whole,
That's what I was gonna ask.
yeah.
So after you've mastered it, it should take 10 minutes or less. At this point, when I do it, it takes me between 5 and 10 minutes to do the whole body.
Okay, yeah, that's manageable again once
Yeah.
you learn it.
Yeah. And up front, when I'm teaching people in person, it can take me about like 45 minutes to teach the whole routine.
Mhm.
The videos themselves, actually going through me teaching the exercise, they're only a couple minutes long each. And as you watch them, you would just kind of like pause it and practice and really get to know the movement.
All right, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Um,
I have a
anyone?
question.
Yeah, go for it.
Lauren, I have a question. And I don't know if you'll know this or not, but someone who has been through menopause, trying to lose weight, I am finding extraordinarily challenging. Do you know any suggestions from a food perspective, portion, calories, anything that you can offer to help with that?
Great question. That's an area that we are seeing a lot of in our practice. So, number one, you're not alone in that conversation. There's so many women who struggle to lose weight. And again, we have to think hormone shifts, right? There's changes in the body, and there's a lot of reasons, right, why we can be hanging on to weight. But I think, just as like a big picture, there's not going to be specific serving sizes or calories or anything because everybody's going to be so different. But in general, there are things that we can do to support the hormones. So kind of taking it a step back and saying, how can we support your body as a woman going through menopause, postmenopausal phase? So from a nutrition standpoint, there's definitely specific nutrients that we can aim to incorporate in our day-to-day and week-to-week eating. And I'm happy to add in, I have a couple resources. Ethan, if we are going to send that email out, Marcy, I'll put it in there as well. There's a great resource from Magdalena Wizalaki. I always think I'm butchering her last name. She has a great Cooking for Hormones balance book. It's awesome. And, it does talk about menopause, postmenopausal, certain types of foods that we can eat during that time frame to better support the body and provide the body what it needs in terms of specific nutrients. So I'd say that's one good resource there. But just know that it's not necessarily a game of eat less or eat more, right? There's more to it than that. And then also taking a look at, I'm sure, Alyssa, you might have some knowledge on this as well, but the appropriate exercises, for that phase of a woman's life. There's also this really cool company called Funk It Wellness, and the whole premise is on adding seeds to your diet. So seeds as in flax seeds, pumpkin seeds, sesame and sunflower seeds. And women swear by it for their hot flashes, for all these hormonal symptoms. I use it for the stage of life that I'm in, but you can use it any stage of a woman's life. And again, what's happening is we're just adding in nutrients from seeds that's helping bridge that gap and helping mitigate. So magnesium, zinc, vitamin E, lignin. So we're helping mitigate those symptoms by supporting the balance of the hormones.
Oh my God, there's so much to it.
There really is.
I mean, it's slightly not even slightly. It's intimidating as hell. And I've always, shared with Ethan, like growing up or even when the kids were young, it was more like, well, what do you guys want for dinner? It wasn't even a thought of feeding your body, like feeding your health. I mean, it was like, do you feel like steak or chicken tonight? It never even entered the equation, at least in our house. So it's really a lot to embrace.
You're so right. And again, you're not alone in that thinking, right? And that goes back to a lot of, Ethan, what you've talked about with diet culture and, calories and, just taking a different mindset and perspective around food, is that it's truly information for the body. It's fuel for the body. It's really medicine. That's what we talk about in our practice all the time. Food is medicine. And if we have the right, pieces for that puzzle based on where you're at right now, we can help support what your overarching goals are for weight loss. But there's so many other things that we need to figure out as to why your body might be hanging on to that weight too.
That's so interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'd like that information too. So
Yeah, we'll put it in the email.
Me too.
Awesome. Anyone else? Something coming up, maybe they're thinking about holiday plans or trying to figure out their routine.
The microbiome mix that you were talking about,
Yeah.
is that taking like the 30, it sounds to me like I've heard about the 30, trying to reach 30 a week of plants and seeds and herbs and things like that. Is that what it's from? Or
I don't know if it's from that, but it would help you reach trying to expand the number of produce elements that you're trying to incorporate in your week. Yes. So I don't know if there's a direct connection between those two, but it's all around the same premise of trying to boost up that diversity for your week.
And you mentioned you added something to it. What do you add to at the end? You said,
oh, when I ate it today.
yeah. Like, I mean, I get the whole chopping it up and having it like, I don't know, in a salad or a smoothie or whatever, but what did you said something about adding?
So what I did for mine today was I added a little bit of apple cider vinegar and olive, salt and pepper, and then just kind of mixed it around, and it was really good because I put a lot of ginger root in it. I was kind of just getting excited with tossing things in. So it has a pretty big bite to it, which I like ginger. So if you like that, that's great.
I do too, yeah.
But it does help cut that a little bit. And then I did see another idea that I want to try, and it's adding it to, like, somebody made burger patties and then they added that mix, the veggies, as part of their burger patty or meatballs. And so, just experimenting and exploring other ways to naturally put it into your meal prep.
Wow.
And now to piggyback off of that, the veggies are raw.
Yes. Yeah. So I didn't cook them or anything. I just put them in the food processor. And then obviously when if you're cooking your burger, meatballs, it's going to go through some of the cooking process with that. So it might get a little bit softer, but yeah, just eating it raw and start slowly. So, just always the caveat, whenever we boost up fiber and produce diversity, you may notice some changes in your bowel movements. So it's always good to start with like a tablespoon a day and work your way up if you're not used to that quantity of fiber in your diet.
On that note, while we're talking about it, because a lot of people ask, fiber, give the quick 101. What is fiber? Not to put you on the spot, but kind of what we're here for is to be put on the spot. How much fiber should people eat in their day, and what are good fiber sources? A lot of people don't understand what fiber is.
That's a great question. So for women, and since we're all women except for you on here, Ethan, 25 grams per day is the minimum. So 25 grams of fiber per day. For men, 38 grams per day. Now, the doctor that I work for, he has a very big passion on fiber, and that's because there's been connections and research that show the increase in longevity based on consuming more fiber in the diet. And that makes sense, right? Because we just talked about the gut microbiome and how important plant fiber is, so no surprise there. When we think about fiber sources, so the easiest way to boost up your fiber is through fruits and vegetables. So that's why I love this concept so much. But yeah, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, whole grains. And as I was mentioning with incorporating slowly, the goal is to increase by about 5 grams every few days or a week, if you tend to have a body that reacts, to like supplements to foods, you just want to be mindful. Again, you just might notice some changes in your digestion and your bowel movements. So yeah, 5 grams a week, boosting it up. I encourage for everybody, do a 1-day snapshot or a 3-day snapshot in something like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer, not for the calories, right? We're not talking about that. We're saying how much fiber am I consuming? Because in the past, when I've done this with clients, usually the average for majority of people is 10 to 15 grams a day, which is not enough. And so even if we can boost that up with produce, like we're talking about, nuts, seeds, whole grains, these are all great examples of ways that we can boost up that fiber content in a really approachable way.
Beautiful. So putting all of this together, somebody here or watching this might put all of this info together into some sort of, plan, or when you're trying to figure out how to apply everything we talked about today, thinking, how do we start small and implement things? So it might be that everybody listening to this is picking one thing on the fitness side. Maybe it's a short mobility routine they're adding in, whether it's cars or some piece of the cars to begin with. They might be adding in some mobility and tracking your fiber, right? Those could be practical 1.0 things we start. And from there, we're then continuing the mobility on the fitness side and maybe adding in some sort of form of exercise we don't typically do with some curiosity or play or fun to it on top of the mobility. And on the nutrition side, you're going to keep trying to hit those fiber goals while diversifying the variety of plant fibers and plant foods you're eating. And all of a sudden, you're going into the winter with what maybe historically was, well, I have no motivation, I can't do my usual things. And then we add on that it's dark and cold and I can't do anything. You're turning it all around into like, wow, I get to experiment with all these new things that I actually haven't been able to do the rest of the year, that all of a sudden I get to do. And the winter becomes fun and motivating and positive. So I just want to throw that out there for helping people maybe connect the dots on kind of how to do this kind of stuff in a way that's not super overwhelming, and practical and enjoyable too.
I would add one thing about, the winter, I'm going to say workout. Try meditation, right? So, and I'm not saying do that instead of working out, but I'm saying, in the winter, we tend to slow down a little bit more, hibernate, take some time to, when it's darker. So take some time to explore meditation, because there's a lot of meditation things on YouTube too that are, free, and, start with a minute, couple minutes, try that out too and see how that works.
I love that.
Exercise your mind too.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's also going into the idea of kind of embracing that we naturally want to hibernate and pull back and adjust. And instead of us trying to fight that by doing, HIIT workouts every morning until we can't walk or something, it's like, let's have some curiosity and do some meditation and some mobility and try some new recipes and kind of slow it down. Exactly what you're talking about. I think that's spot on. Awesome.
Give the body a little bit of a rest.
Yeah, that's good. Does anybody have any final thoughts, questions? before we jump? No? Good. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to send the recording of this out. Also in that email, like we talked about, Lauren mentioned some specific resources. Alyssa mentioned some specific resources. I'll compile those and put those in an email to everybody with this recording. And if you have any contact info for them as far as questions, you can reach out to them. I'm going to put their contact info in the email. So you can write them directly. You can write me if you have any specific questions. And as you go through this, the big reminder is just that you're not alone in navigating all this stuff, and it can feel kind of daunting and challenging, but we're always here for you. And there's a whole community of people that are going through the same kind of challenges. So it's a good reminder to have.
Mhm.
Wonderful.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a good
Thank
rest of your
you.
night. I'll see you all soon.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.